Welcome to episode 3092 of Dan and Abram versus Life. I think
I
that's where
love
we're
it.
at right now. Yeah.
I think we're honestly here. I can get you the episode count. It's not
Oh yeah.
10,092.
It's not
Unfortunately,
9,092.
whatever one you
32.
just said, it's not that high, but I can get you the actual episode count here in just a moment.
All right.
Because we had a few, and then, yeah, I mean, let me see real quick. Stance, location. I should know this offhand.
Well, I
I
know.
just
I like.
don't, man.
It's like I always joke with people. Like whenever we're playing a basketball game, and they're
Yeah.
like, "What's the score?" I'm like, "I'm kicking your ass. You should keep your own score."
Yes. Yes.
It's like I'm winning. As a matter of fact, thanks for asking.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I don't know. Yeah, so we're on. This will be episode 29.
Really? Wow, that's pretty
Yes,
cool.
yes.
Actually, that
Episode. Go
that
ahead.
goes that goes back to a couple things, Dan. I think that goes back to the other day we discussed how to eat an elephant, and you got to kill it first. Actually, behind me, I
I
went
thought it
ahead and
was you. You ate his ass.
you got to eat. You got to eat the ass first,
I just
and
remember you talking about eating elephants' asses. But go ahead.
yeah, but like as a hyena, hungry hyena. But the other part of it was like, so you're trying to eat the elephant, so to speak, is you take it one bite at a time. And I think that the same way that we're now at episode 29, we're gonna pass 30. I mean, like, was your 30th birthday a big deal? It was to me. I thought my dick was gonna fall off. It turns out I was fucking fine. My 30s were actually really great, and I feel like I'm just now hitting my stride before I get to 40. Um, but anyway, that's the end of that. That's it. It's just saying one piece at a time. Yeah, and we're
On
now
my
at 30
30th
episodes.
birthday, my dad told me to not trust an erection, or well, no, don't trust. Don't trust an erection. He said, "Don't trust a fart. Don't trust a fart. Don't waste an erection." After 30,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
Don't trust a direction. Don't waste a fart.
yeah, that's what he said. Now he said, don't waste an erection. Don't trust a fart after 30." And I literally think maybe a couple days later, I went to fart and I shit a little bit in my pants. So I
Yeah.
remember him. I remember thinking like, "Oh my god, he cursed me. That's never happened before." But
Hmm.
that was my first shart. I was at 30.
Really? No, it happened to me much sooner. I've actually shat my pants. I was actually in military school, and we were standing at attention. You know that you know this very well, much more than me. Where everybody's rigid, standing at attention. There's somebody yelling at you, and then all of a sudden, I just was like, "Oh, this is happening," and I just took off running right out of the formation.
Yeah,
Everybody's rigid still, and I'm just like, I'm fucking out of here. And I ran for the bathroom, but the guy's just mid sentence yelling at us, and he sees me running, no idea what I'm doing. Comes to find me, I'm in the stall trying to change out. I had to just throw away my underwear, try and clean up the mess, and go and went back to it.
yeah,
What else do you do? Sometimes you shit your pants, and there's nothing you can do about it.
yeah. I pissed my pants twice in boot camp, like being standing
Yeah.
in front of me because they wouldn't let us go to the bathroom, and they just kept us there.
Mhm.
And I think I had a bladder infection, like at one point too. But I remember like a couple times they wouldn't let me go to the bathroom, and I peed in my pants, and I just got used to like wearing pee pants, which I
Really?
don't think you're supposed to do. But it was what I'm basically saying is like you realize it's not the end of the world to piss or shit yourself. It's
No.
really not. Like as long as you can explain why, you know what I mean? Like it's
Well,
like, oh, I was in a position I couldn't get anywhere. This is what happened. If you're
yeah.
just walking and then just shit fills up your pants, there's a bigger issue at hand, and you should be more scared. But if you
That
know
did
it's
happen to me.
coming, and
Yes.
you can't get out of there, that's fine. That's explainable.
Yeah.
You'll live. You'll survive. You'll throw that underwear away.
Yeah. Yeah, you will. We were filming with one of the guys down in South Africa, and like everybody was getting sick when we were down there filming. And I remember I went up to one of like the guys. And I was like, "Hey, how's your day going?" He's like, "Well, I've only shit my pants twice today, so it's a pretty good day." And because they just had to keep working, there was nothing he could do. He had to keep working and filming, and everybody was sick. And just like, well, I guess I'm just gonna shit my pants, throw away the whatever that is, clean myself up, and move on to the next one.
That's all you
Anyway,
can do. That's all you
so
can do. And really in
yeah,
life in general is like that, right? Sometimes life is like your underwear. Sometimes you get shit all in it and you just got to start all over, you know? It's not
yeah,
the end of the world.
Yeah, and I'm changing diapers now for my kids, and if anybody really wants a life perspective, I mean, help out your grandparents. Like I remember, taking care of help. It's not like I was taking care of. I'm not going to, try and claim big credit or anything like that. I helped out a couple times. It wasn't like I wasn't there giving full time care. But my grandma was passing from lung cancer, and she was getting eaten up by the cancer pretty hard, and just in a lot of pain, and her body was withering, and you could see it. And I remember, when I had to change her diaper, and I remember when I looked at my grandpa and he saw that I was changing her diaper and I had to, wipe, clean her. And, you could see that he didn't want me to have to go through that, but also he didn't, want her to have to go through that. He wanted her to be able to take care of herself. And I don't know. I mean, what really all I'm getting at is if you really want some life perspective, change your parents' diapers or your grandparents' diapers. It happens. It happens to the best of us, and
Yeah.
you'll get there. So anyway, on that note, I wanted to talk about the Snowflake Challenge.
Okay. Go for it.
By the way, I don't know. Can you see this on the? Can you see this?
I can't see you at all.
You can't see it all. Oh
No,
man,
but that's
I'm
okay.
holding. I
First
just
and
I just
foremost,
pulled
this is
an arrow.
a
Oh, nothing.
podcast.
Yeah,
So
I've got a bow and arrow. Fucking loaded. What fucking?
okay, here, wait a minute.
I'm
If
sitting
it's
down. I
if
didn't
it's
even
recording
stand.
on your side, it'll
Yeah.
record it. It doesn't matter what I see.
All
You'll
right.
be
Well,
okay.
cool. I just
So
yanked a
go ahead.
bone in my
I'll just
ass.
watch this later when we post it. But the
Well,
fact that we got audio, that's the most important. I'm glad,
well, I'm firing arrows off as we're doing this. And I'm staying seated, but that's too hard to do because this is just a 35-pound draw. I've got the 60-pound draw over there that I'm about to throw into, which is relevant to the Snowflake Challenge. The
Uh-huh.
Snowflake Challenge, Dan came up. I texted the other day. By the way, these arrows are landing on target. I'll have to show a picture. But anyway,
They sound like they are.
dude, they're kicking it. This is not bad for a sitting. By the way, okay, so a sidetrack, which we do all the time, but who gives a shit? It's you don't like it. Well, you should be used to it by now. This is
Yes.
you're along for the ride for however long this goes. There's a scene in Shogun written by James Clavell, which is a great book, fantastic book. Really like James Clavell. But there's a scene where like Buntaro is like this samurai, Buntaro-san, and he's just a grumpy, crotchety motherfucker. And like in this scene, they're getting drunk, and then like all of a sudden he goes ahead and the other guy, the Anjin-san, the white guy from the Netherlands, challenge like the subject of archery comes up, and Butaro-san, this badass samurai, says, "Pick one of the posts out in the at the entry to my gate of my house." And the guy's like, "I don't know. I mean, like, he's like the right one." He's like, "Okay." And like his servant brings Butaro-san the bow, and the Butaro-san is still sitting down, and they're drunk. And like the other guy's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" The Netherlander, like the white guy, like he's showed up into like this is feudalistic Japan. He's like, "Whoa, let's open the door. Let's do this when we're sober." And he's like, "No, I shoot now." And he stays sitting, and without even like looking, he goes ahead and because he knows his own house. I'm going to actually look while I fire this one. I'm looking at the camera. Oh, and that one's right on target. But he fires a couple of arrows and they all land in this post. Of course, it's a fucking book, so whatever. But anyway, so the Snowflake Challenge. I really wanted to do that because the other day I was going for a jog and there was these two older guys that passed me, and like I was, it was like an hour and 15-minute jog, and I'm recovering from my Achilles tear, and I'm jogging with my son in a what do you call it, a stroller, yeah, stroller, and the front wheel screwed up, so it slows me down a little bit, it keeps on shaking. These were all excuses. I was like, I'm gonna fucking outrun these motherfuckers. I don't care if they're doing a short run, if I've been running for an hour and a half, I'm gonna smoke these guys right now just to make sure they know I can smoke them and I wasn't sure if I was an asshole for doing that, but anyway, beyond that. So leading up to the Snowflake Challenge, which I sent you a brief of. So we've discussed a lot in this podcast, and it seems like I'm learning as we're doing this, but it seems like the subject of we're the adults in the room kind of theme keeps coming back up. and that we have to solve our own problems in our own lives, each individually and collectively. And some friends have like people have written in and said, "Hey, I really appreciated that podcast. That really hit home. I really like this." And these are grown men, like 30 years old, and women, I mean, like 30, 40, 20s, is kind of the average age range. But as I was running and these old guys were passing me, I was like, I'm so sick of being told I'm a fucking worthless millennial. I'm really tired of that shit. Ooh, ooh. That one was a pretty good fucking shot. So anyway, as I was thinking about it, I started cracking up myself. I was like, all right, we're going to come up with the snowflake acid test, where if you really think millennials are just incompetent or lazy snowflakes, well, I challenge that idea because I know a lot of really cool, hard hitting motherfuckers that are about my age or a little bit younger, and they're really making the world a better place. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, we also when we say millennials, like I think you got to break that down to kids who were born in the 90s, kids who were born in the 80s, right? Because millennials, I think, goes to like 82. So kids who were
Oh,
born in 1993 are, I was born in 83. If that's a 10-year difference, but that's a world of difference. These are kids who came up with the internet.
okay. So,
These are the
so
kids who
wait, wait,
don't
wait.
leave
So
their
I'm
houses.
if I'm an 83, what does that mean?
You're still a millennial, but you're not in the same group as them. So when people are bitching about how soft millennials are, or how they're not really referring to us. They're referring to like the 90s babies. The
Okay.
kids who came up like 100% on the internet, like, uh, they don't go outside, they don't know how to do shit. They don't like our generation, like at least until, in our childhood, we got started off, going outside, rough house, and doing all the right shit.
Pretty
Now,
good
I
shit.
mean, I'm sure like Gen Xers and that'll think that we're pussies, or whatever. But that's every generation thinks that. But
Yeah.
there is a huge difference. And that's why I keep telling people, I'm like, I don't think it's right to call everyone millennials. I think there needs to be a break in the middle because there is two different kinds of people within one generation. And there's what I call it the fucking internet group. The internet group, the kids who came up with that shit in their life all the time, they grew up on it. And instead of going outside, they went on the computer. And
Okay.
that's when there's a big difference. So I would say I would put the snowflake challenge more on them
Oh.
than on you and me. Because
Oh.
I think when they bitch about millennials, they're not bitching about you and me. They're bitching about these 90s
Oh.
kids.
Oh, well, that totally defeats the whole purpose of what I had all plotted out.
Yeah. No one's shitting on you, dude. Like that's what I'm saying. No one's like even shit. Like, here's the thing. I'm shitting on my own group. Like I'm a millennial,
Wait,
but
wait,
I'm
wait, wait. So
shitting
wait,
on the
wait, wait,
younger
wait, wait. So
millennials.
do we even have a group then?
Not really. That's
We're
why I
not
don't like.
millennials.
I think they need to reconfigure some shit because we are closer to Gen Xers, like in our experiences, than we are to the second part of our own generation.
All
There's a
right.
huge break in the middle of that shit, and like I think that's why I'm like, if you were born before, I'll say 92. Now I want you to fuck that. If you were born before 90, if you were born, I was shit, 88, 90. So I'll say like, I don't know. What I'm saying is if you were born before the late 80s, you are a completely different person than the rest of the millennials. That's
Okay.
what I'll say,
All right.
in my opinion, right? That's
Okay.
what because my experiences are like yours. Like I came up going outside, fucking around, like, dude, and there's kids who are still technically millennials
Yeah.
or men, and I tell them stories of shit that we did as a kid, and they can't believe it. They're like, "What?" And it's like, "Well, we're technically the same generation, but we're not." You know what I mean? Fucking
Yeah.
AOL came in and fucked us up.
Well, I also
So
think that there's also like your income, your poverty level, your bracket definitely would have affected the experiences you had. I think you probably were more prone to rougher, more outside experiences, as if you were wealthier. It's just that's not a negative. That's not anything. It's just like there's a more higher likelihood that that was your experience. Like I
yeah,
know that.
well, here's
Yeah.
an experience. Here's what I'll give you as a good example. Um, Myself and a friend of mine that used to live with me out here, we both grew up in the same part of town. The same part, dude. Went to the same, even knew some of the same families.
Yeah.
He was born in a time. He's a computer kid. You know what I mean? Like not even fully, like he still played sports, but a big part of his life, his social life was on the computer. If you were to meet both of us, you would never fucking think that we came from the same place. You would never even believe it. And that's what I'm saying. It's like him being born when he was born, his life experience is completely different than mine. Even though we grew up technically from down the street from each other. So it's just the developments, the technological developments that started keeping kids inside because
Yeah.
like the internet's fun. Instead of going outside and scratching their knees and getting in fights and throwing mud at each other and shit like that builds character. You know,
All
like
right.
they just that's where I'm thinking the gap is. So I would be like with what you shot me with your snowflake challenge. I want to
Mhm.
see that more with Gen Zers, later Gen X, or I'll say later millennials, and all the Gen Zers. I want to see these
Okay.
kids try it because I
Well, I
don't think
tell
they
you what.
fucking got it in them.
Okay. Well, I tell you what. In that case, we're just going to go ahead and put this challenge out there.
All
Now,
right, put the
I would
snowflake
like
challenge because I do
would
like
like
the snowflake challenge. We could just like
we need a
we can figure
disclaimer.
out who exactly we mean later.
I hate. We mean everybody. It's just Detroit versus everybody. How about that? Fuck
Just
everybody.
everybody.
I'm
Yeah.
fucking taking all comers. Let's fucking go. I'm feeling like go right up the middle because that's where the action is.
That's where the action is, dude.
Fuck everything else. You know what? It sounded like a good idea in a movie once, so I'm going to do it. So, really, I think where we're dealing here is we do have to put out this disclaimer, like, hey, y'all, don't be fucking idiots. This is both humorous and real to prove a point, but it's fucking humor. So don't fucking do stupid shit. Use some judgment. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Like, and I shouldn't have to explain what dumb shit is. Like, like you see those commercials where like there's like two people and they're talking and then their car stops for them because there's a dump truck in front of them.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, thank God our car knew to stop for the fucking dump truck. And you're like, what? Are you fucking high? Like, what?
Did you not
What?
notice the fucking dump truck?
It's
Like,
a
yeah,
dump truck in front of you. You know what? So, like, you're a fucking idiot if you don't see the fucking dump truck in front of you. Or even better yet, you shouldn't have been driving so close to that goddamn dump truck in the first place. By the way, everybody out there, if you're on my fucking bumper, I'm going to fucking throw some fucking not rolls of quarters, something
rolls
metallic
of
and
quarters.
dense.
Said it. You're gonna throw
Yeah.
rolls of quarters at their
Yeah.
car.
No, like I mean, spark plugs. I'll throw spark plugs out behind me to break your windshield.
There you
Yeah,
go.
for sure. Yeah, like
Fuck
if you
those
come up,
people.
especially if I'm on my motorcycle. Oh fuck you, man! I'll fucking throw stuff. I'll throw oil on your windshield, and
Yeah.
that just means that then you can't see anything, and then you're fucked. Yeah. So anyway, don't drive on people's asses.
Yeah.
Moving on. Moving on. The snowflake challenge. So I guess I originally thought it was going to be old people challenging me, which I thought it would have been easier, fighting old dudes.
Yeah. No, you had your head was in the right spot. I
But
totally,
it,
yeah.
it, it
I
turns
get it.
out, yeah, it turns out I think we've challenged everybody, but that's fine too. Fuck it, let's do it. So in the snowflake challenge, I think it's going to be a series of events, and it's going to be life skills. And so I think you should just start off with a bar fight. And by the way, this bar fight will have some rules and regulations, primarily like no glass shards or weapons. And most of the rules that'll probably be in place will be rules I'll make. And I completely plan to cheat.
I was gonna say
Moving
you're
on.
gonna grab some balls. I know you. You're gonna get some balls in your
Oh,
hand
I was just,
and
I
some
would just
you're gonna
open with,
fish hook.
I would just go straight taser, just
There you
straight to the
go.
taser. Be like, yeah, okay, this is going to be a good old fashioned bar fight. Then fucking shoot him with a taser.
There you go. I like it. I like where your head's at.
All right. And the loser has to buy the drinks. Then you go from that, and there'll be a series of maybe some physical obstacles, right? You got to do a 5 mile run. And then you have to, with a kid in your arms, and it has to be your kid, and you got to do it safely. And then at the end of it, you got to change a diaper, and you got to balance a checkbook, and you have to actually do it right. And it'll be scored on each of your events. And then we'll move on to the next event, so we've got just a very basic life skill bar fight. And then you've got, an actual physical run and some actual, handling life and juggling real life situations. And then I think you should go to something like you have to pass the naturalization test that all immigrants to this country have to pass.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you think it's really easy, you're going to blow through that. I encourage you, go look up what people actually have to memorize in order to be able to be a citizen of this country, because I think most people in this country take it for granted, and probably in a lot of countries, and where they don't actually know all of the shit. And I think part of that would be you have to just name your local representative. That's it. I would be satisfied with that. You just have to name your local representative, and most people will fail at that. Moving on, we go to the second bar fight.
Second bar fight. Is this all in one day? How many days we completing this?
I think it should be ran in all consecutively in one day is what I think should happen. Yeah. So like,
Okay.
and the bar fights should have to go until someone is either unconscious, like excessive blood, or a tap out. I think any of those, are reasonable. And
What about unable to defend themselves? Like if
oh,
they're
then you're
clearly
gonna get
just not
fucked.
even fucking there. Like you popped them one time and they can't even put their hands up. Like I think we should let's go with blood, unconscious, unable to defend
No.
yourself.
At that point, you're just gonna get fucked up. That's
You're gonna get killed. Someone's gonna fucking kill you. Okay, go ahead. I
oh
like
gosh. At that point, I'm gonna tickle you.
it. I like it.
Yeah. So I think after like the second bar fight, you go for into the woods, all right, and any natural landscape, and you hunt each other.
You hunt each other.
Well, not with weapons, you just like track each other. Like some good old like Predator versus Schwarzenegger, and you got to do some
So
like
it's like
track.
adult. You're basically saying it's adult hide and go seek.
Yeah.
Okay. In the
Adult
woods.
hide and go seek. But when I catch you, I tickle you.
Okay.
Maybe it should be done in the dark, and like out in the woods, and you don't have a GPS and you don't have any of that. And then you go straight from that, and you have to go to a foreign country, and you have no phone. This is really important. No phone, and you don't know when you're getting there. You just show up and you just get thrown off into this country at the port or at the airplane at the airport. You have to make friends, and then you have to make your way back, and you have to have that friend's contact, and they have to invite you to go back. So it proves that you're not a fucking asshole, and you can get by, and you can make friends in other cultures other than your own, circle. So that's a cultural, I think, parameter that's included in there.
Okay.
I think at that point, you go on to a debate. There needs to be a debate at some point in time. And I think this debate would entail going back and forth on how whichever generation is saying, oh, you're a bunch of pussies, and this is why. And it used to be the good old days. And you're like, okay, I'll take that conversation on. Let's have that fight. All right. What was the good old days, and what made it so good? Was it the fact that no one challenged your authority? Was it the fact that you had autonomy and no one was challenging for your position in life, and other people were regulated to not be themselves in order to make you comfortable? Was that part of it? I mean, like, and I think in some of those cases it would be, but I would be willing to at least have that conversation. I think moving on from there, what else did we have? Fuck. Oh yeah. I wanted to go to a job site. You have to show up to a job site. You've never been there before, and you have to operate heavy machinery. All right. And then you have to, like, I don't know which, it doesn't matter. Dump truck, crane, backhoe, excavator, any of those items, you have to be able to successfully operate that. You have to look at a set of plans, and you have to be able to build some of that building. All right. And you have to not do a shit job, and you have to not break anything. So that covers heavy machinery, and that covers basic life skills of being able to build, something. Moving on from that, you have to fix your own truck or a vehicle. You have to change your own oil. And I think one of the things that I really wanted to add in there is that you also have to change the oil on your electric vehicle.
Did you change the oil on your electric vehicle? Okay. Your synthetic oil? Yeah.
I want to see who's going to fail that one, like people start looking around for like the oil. After that, I think, depending on what else we come up with, I think at that point, we're finally ready for the final bar fight, which has to be done naked. I think shoes should be allowed, though, because, bar fight with no shoes is just silly.
Yeah, that would be ridiculous.
That would be ridiculous.
Even though you're naked.
You're naked. Yeah. But like,
and you've had a fucking debate, you balanced a checkbook, and you fought twice that day after playing it out on the seek. Not having shoes, that's what would make this whole thing
that's
pretty
just not
fucked up,
and no steel toes. Okay. But I think there's something to be said, because like, if you're gonna have a fight, you're like, okay, you're having a fight, but all of a sudden you're naked, and it changes your perspective of your value system anyway, or like how you feel about yourself and what you think is appropriate and not appropriate. And you're suddenly put in this, it's like, hey, you're just a naked animal that was fucking born, and you got trained to put clothes on. That's all it is. I think the very last thing, like there's been some jokes and comedy, you know, kind of through this, but I think it does paint a real picture. I think the real lasting thing that you would take home from this is that if it was going to be an older generation, is what is your relationship with your kids today? And what kind of a world did you leave to your kids? How did you make it better? And I don't want to see these broad, it's like you individually in your life, in your action, what was your relationship with them? And how did you make, what kind of a world did you leave behind collectively? So that's an individual and collective. And I think that the only way for us to debate it, you know, from our generation is to wait another 20 years and see how our kids turn out and what kind of a world do we live for our kids. Because once you get past all of your own, like, oh, I had a job and I had a career and all this, and you get towards your twilight years, I would imagine that your job and your career and things you have a different set of values at that point. And you might, you know, care more for the longevity and your legacy, maybe more so than your own personal individual short-term gain. So anyway, I think that that's the snowflake challenge. I would love to hear people's opinions and thoughts on what that would be like. Oh yeah, I forgot one. We have to kill something, butcher it, and eat it.
Okay.
Okay, speaking of which, this is now the 60-pound bow that we're up to. This is the big boy bow, and it's actually pretty hard draw. Whoa, oh man, careful. I mean, this will kill some shit. I could kill a fucking elk with this.
I'm not trying to stand in front of the fucking 20 pound or whatever you had before. I'm not gonna do. I'm taking them all serious.
Yeah. So
I take bow and arrows that little kids have with the suction cups on it. I take those serious.
Yeah. Well, no, you should.
I just don't fuck around.
Damn, I am not fucking around, Dan. Dude, I'm stoked. I had a good day. How was your day?
It was all right, man. It was all
Yeah?
right.
It was all right.
Yeah, I was reading about Gestalt.
Oh,
It's a pretty cool.
wait. I know that name. Why do I know that name?
It's a theory. Well, so there's a theory. It's a psychological theory, but it's also like it's projected in art too, or design. But it depends on how you're looking at it.
Okay.
So have you ever seen those pictures where it's like someone shows you a black and white picture and you're like, what is this of? And someone's like, oh, it's a vase. And you're like, oh, or it's two faces looking at each other.
Are you talking about
get what I'm
ink blots?
saying?
Rorschach ink blots?
Not like ink plots. Ink plots is same concept, but not okay. So like there's one of two or one of three possibilities the picture could be. You get what I'm saying? Whereas a warship, I mean, that could be anything. That's just however they perceive
Okay.
it. But like you've seen those pictures where, or even emblems. I'll say this: emblems that as long as like it's literally like a few things within proximity, and a design makes the emblem. But in reality, if you were to separate these things or pull them apart, they wouldn't be that emblem.
Huh.
I'm trying to think of a good example. That was the one that I thought I was gonna have. Like whenever people show you those pictures and they're like, "What do you see?" and someone's like a tree, and then someone else
So
goes, "No, it's a
for
fucking
those of you that are out there that are listening to this and like we have to visualize your words.
Just
So
look
I'm
up Gestalt. Just look up Gestalt. Look that up, and you'll see it. It
just
factors
Google it,
into
kids.
perception as well as, and then there's a psychological theory, like basically that we are, until we understand all of our different perceptions or all of our different designations in society, we'll never get better.
Huh.
Like we can't, you have to be okay with yourself before you move forward. And until you understand all angles of yourself and how it pertains to your world, your responsibilities, and your society around you, you're never going to get better if you have any kind of like issues, because you don't understand yourself. You don't understand yourself, you can't understand how you're supposed to be. So that was what I spent a good part of my day studying. And then I also well, it was like I did like some simple classwork, which I thought was, we were talking about the ethics of like of mental health therapy as it pertains to like the therapist and their beliefs and the client's beliefs.
Hmm.
So a therapist is not allowed, or at least by like ACA standards and stuff, they're not allowed. You can't post judgment on somebody at all.
Help us out that aren't in the know. What's the ACA?
So like the American Counseling Association
Okay.
was
All
like
right.
actually
Census
your
regulated
face-to-face
counseling.
therapy, you know?
All right.
Because here's the thing, a general rule of psychology or science in general is that you don't walk in with any preconceived prejudice. You literally take the variables and you may have a hypothesis, but your job is to find out the answer, not to prove your own point. Do you get what I'm saying? That's where people try to do now, and you're not learning anything from that. So when you're a therapist or you're going to help somebody, when you walk in there, you don't bring your shit in with you, meaning like how you feel about abortion, homosexuality, fucking race, any of that. You can't bring any of that into a session with your client because
Yeah.
it doesn't fucking matter what you think. It
Yeah.
matters what they like. That's what I'm saying. Like you got to remember it's them, right?
Yeah.
So I did some stuff on that where they're pretty much like if you're a I'm trying to think how to explain this. If you're like a really Christian person, right, or a religious person, you don't believe in, abortion or homosexuality, but yet you have a homosexual client or a client that wants to get abortion or whatever. What do you like? What do you? What's the right thing to do? And then we
Well,
were
that's
like
that's
reading
that's
up
really
on
tricky because like that
it's.
was what they ran into with all of the face profile or the face recognition is
Mhm.
what they were running into was that there was even though like the individuals that were developing it didn't have biases and like they're like well no I'm not racist and I don't have biases. What turned out to happen is that there was biases like cultural biases that they like were patterned into them that were affecting and influencing the way they developed their software and their work. And so at least that's the argument that I've heard, is that like they're like, hey, like this doesn't identify people, minority or people of color in the same way that it identifies other people.
Well,
And
how I mean, but we also, and in their argument, we facially have differences,
yeah,
and
like
that's where I think we're getting a little, our society's getting a little fucking stupid with trying to like, the intention is great, is
yeah,
to put us all in the same, but we're getting fucking dumb with it. It's like, dude, I'm sorry, like
well,
I'm not.
that
Most
does
African
that does
Americans have a
happen.
wider nose, like than I
Yeah,
do,
no,
so
and
that's
that's
not being
fine.
racist.
But no, it wasn't referring to that actually. Like it was
Okay,
actually so like that makes sense. Like I'm totally on board with that. It's like when you give a description of guy, you're like we would have guys in our job, and we're like, wait, Black Kenny or White Kenny, and because we had two
yeah,
Kennys, and it was the easiest way to tell the difference between the two Kennys. But
yeah,
like both are great dudes, but like it wasn't a negative thing. But if you're trying to figure out who was who, it would help to give a description. It's why
and it's
like
quick.
when you have yeah, it's quick and easy, and it's probably why like you're going to give that description if it's cops. Like that's a
Yeah,
good example. You're like Hispanic male. You're like, okay, all right, white guy, tattoos. You're like, okay, like height, weight. Give me a description so I can kind of narrow it down.
yeah,
So that's all fine. But what they're referring to is there's these kind of like ingrained, and actually, I can speak to this personally because there was biases and like or not bias they were biases but essentially I was unaware that I had accepted that there was these broad universal truths of this is how things are, and it wasn't that somebody came and taught me it or told me specifically this is how it is, but it is how it is. Like for example, these are things I'm having to try and figure out. And this is good to have this conversation, Alex. I don't know how I'm going to have this conversation with my son in a few years. Um, I had a friend who had said some really dumb shit, at least in my opinion, and they didn't realize they were saying really dumb shit, and it sounded like something I would have said. To be perfectly honest, just
hmm
2 years ago, I would have said it, and I would have had no idea that I was like, dude, I'm totally in the clear. I am totally in the right. What I'm saying is totally fine. I'm not offending anyone. I know what I'm talking about. Fast forward a couple of years, I'm like, oh. okay, I was a fucking idiot and I didn't know and I didn't understand. And so now I'm having to find ways. I was envisioning how I was going to have a conversation with my son and explain to my son in this hypothetical situation with this individual. It'd be like, I would like to tell my son that is some really stupid fucking shit, kid, and he's a
Mhm.
dumb motherfucker. And I would like to be able to tell my son that. But then the follow up would be, so also a follow up. You can't call him a dumb motherfucker and say that's some really stupid shit. And the reason that my son, this is a conversation I'm trying to like formulate in my head how I'm going to have it, how I'm going to explain to it, like, hey, you can't talk to people like that because you are going to be considered to be black in America. You're not going to be considered white. You're not going to be considered mixed. You're not going to be considered any of this. You're going to be considered black in America. I mean, like, that's just, you call it what you want. I mean, like, it's, and, I don't know, have the answers is the truth. I don't know, but I'm trying to figure this out. But what I do know is that if he starts talking like a hood rat, like all, like start cussing people out, there's
Yeah.
this there's this immediate association that, oh, well, that's just how you talk.
Yeah.
That's just how those people talk. That's just how you're just not educated. And that is not just me in one instance. That's a very broad, like cultural challenge that we're facing is like, okay, and I have no fucking clue. I have no clue, and I don't know what I don't know.
Well,
But
this
I
is
do.
this
What
is
I'm getting at is that there's like these biases that I
oh,
wasn't even aware of that are ingrained. That how do you not know what you don't know? And like I guess it's hard to see when it's invisible. Oh, fuck.
my whole question is how does that imply into facial recognition? Because wouldn't
Oh,
facial recognition just be
yeah,
physical?
yeah. So what I'm getting at is that I've had like this individual, said some things that and like this, like they're like, yeah, I'm not racist at all, and they're not. They genuinely are not racist people. No, no overt stuff, but they adhere to these ideas, and you're like, yeah, that's no, that's some racist shit, and like I'm understanding that better and better, and like it took me a long time to even be willing to accept that I didn't understand some things. And so what I'm getting at is that, or like with this, with the people with the facial recognition, is that the argument that has been presented is that there's these kind of subtle tones of not necessarily biases, but these broadly accepted ideologies, and they subconsciously are influencing these people's work without these people like trying to actively do something wrong. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
I here's my thing. I understand the bias things. I understand everything you're saying as far as like way of talking, everything else. Where I'm confused is if something is facial recognition, it's 100% based on physical features.
It should
So
be.
that's where in that just that's only like only in that particular um scenario am I confused because I get the rest of it. I mean, I understand definitely
Well,
the concept of of prejudice or
we need to get
stereotypes or
somebody
anything
who
like that.
knows more
Totally.
than us, but I think it would come down to something like Chinese people all look the same to me.
Yeah. But
I
if
think it
it's
would come down like I'm oversimplifying. I'm not saying that's what it. Well, actually, there was parts like there's different parts. So in Guangzhou, that actually was real, but over in Shanghai, every face was totally different, even though they had the same height, same eye color, same hair color, same haircut. Men and women. But like what I'm getting at is I'm oversimplifying the idea of like when like they're like, oh, all you white guys look the same. Oh, all you Chinese guys look the same. Oh, all you black guys look the same. Like like that's somebody saying that, and they may not actively think it, but just the way that they've been raised and like the way that they've been taught influences them, and they are disproportionately not aware of other subtleties in a culture or a people or a minority that someone that is in it would actually be aware of.
well, yeah, but that's and this is where I kind of get I think the discussion goes a little silly sometimes. I think there's a very real, like you're saying, thing that we have to get into. But I think sometimes people are looking for the boogeyman where he isn't one, or where there's a generalized. So, for example, yes, if someone is talking like a quote unquote hood rat, Yes, they're going to be judged for that. But in
Yeah.
general, if you run into someone from the fucking bayou who talks like, you know what I mean, that's not proper
Yeah.
English or proper sentence, they're going to get judged. It's
Yeah.
there's going to be a fine basis of someone who is educated and not educated. There's going to be a
Yeah.
bias of someone who is not educated, probably more likely to be in a position where they're going to screw you over because they're destitute. Is that all the time? No, but I don't think it necessarily has this like people sometimes don't realize that our brains rationalize things off of survival, and it's maybe something we need to change, but it doesn't
Mm,
necessarily mean what everyone wants it to mean. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
as far as so I was reading this thing about when we look at other races and other races look at us, how there's just generalized we all look the same. Okay. That's also
Mhm.
the same, like it's how your brain pretty much like takes something in. If it's used to seeing one thing all the time and then it goes to something that's just a little bit different, it is going to group it. That's how it works. It's the same thing as like, okay, with language. All right. We grew up speaking English. We've been around Spanish, we've been around other stuff. If we went to, I want to say maybe Zimbabwe or something, and
Yeah.
their language literally uses sounds we don't know how to make and we can't even make out. We can't, not with our ear. We're not used to hearing it.
Yeah.
So it's not that we think everyone from Zimbabwe is a piece of shit. That's why we don't learn their language. It's that literally your brain has only so much ability to process or a routine building mechanism off of what it hears the most. So whenever you go to see something outside of it or hear something outside of it, there's going to be kind of a barrier up at first for you to be able to really look in and perceive it. That doesn't
I,
mean
I think.
that
I
you
think. What,
think that that's less or not.
yeah.
And I think now when we instead of just taking that into consideration, the minute we don't respond to something exactly like another kind of person would respond, instead
Yeah.
of taking that into consideration, we're automatically like, you're a bigot, that's racist, that's this, instead of
Well,
like
if you
looking
go
into the
back a step,
scientific facts.
yeah, what you just described actually is actually a much better description of what they were talking about, the problem that they're running into with the ingrained bias in the facial recognition programmers is like that they may not notice certain subtleties in the what they're programming, even though that they don't know that they're not, and they're not trying to be a bigot. The argument wasn't they were bigots or racists or anything like that.
Yeah.
The argument is that it was not working as well for it was disproportionately statistically not operating at the same efficacy for one group of minority people as it was for a different group of people. And
Yeah.
so they're like, well, why is that? Why are we at this? Why are we at this percent of accuracy here, and why are we not at this accuracy over here? And it's I think you actually just gave a really good description. It's not that it's not bigot, it's not racist, it's not any of that. It's just that these are different people and they see the world differently and they haven't experienced the world in a certain way, and so
Or it's just
their life,
familiarization.
yeah,
Like
yeah. And so
okay,
their life experiences is what they put into their work, which is reasonable.
well, yeah, and just
Right?
like like there's just gonna be certain things that if you are not if it is not presented to you,
Yeah.
you're not going to be familiar with it. It's because, dude, our brain is a mechanism that builds off of routine. That's what it does. Your hippocampus that like stores your memories, like it draws back on something to basically process what's happening in front of you. So if it's seen something, have I seen this before? What does this look like? What is this? It's like you're going back into your own computer. So I don't
Mhm.
like that because your computer isn't familiar with it, that it's called a bias. I don't like that. Like that's, and I
Okay.
think we use that word too much. It's like you're just not familiar. It doesn't mean that you think one's better than the other. You just haven't been
Mhm.
around this one.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I hate, and I think that like people purposely put that shit into conversations to push for separation.
Okay.
And it's
What
like,
like no, I can accept a clarification on the language. That makes sense. What would be the
and I
clarification on the
think
language, you think? How would you
I,
clarify that?
and I think that I think, and I'm not saying on you. I think
No,
in
no, no.
general we do that. Like, I don't think we do it. I think it's done on purpose. I think here's the thing. In my mind, there's nobody that is more happier
Yeah.
than about separation than rich people. There's nobody happier that everyone is mad at a
I've made that
different group.
argument of class warfare for a long time.
Yeah, is rich people because they can use that as a way to market to all of us and as a way to control all of us.
Mhm.
Now, with that being said, I am not dumb. Like, I do believe 100% that there is racial division, there is discrimination, that there is not a, you know what I mean, a fair shake for everyone. 100%. What I feel like though is that we're being counterproductive because we're trying to find it in places where it isn't necessarily there. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, we're oversimplifying an issue by calling it bias or racist or whatever, and it's like, no, that's just
I
this.
think in
But
reference
we're
to this particular one, they were calling it ingrained bias, but I think the clarification on the language is a good call
but
because
bias by definition is preferring one over the other, and
yeah,
this
so
isn't a form
that's
of
conscious.
preference.
That's a
That,
conscious act rather than it being,
yeah, so I
oh
wouldn't call that
man, that was
bias
a
at
great
all.
shot.
I would just call it familiarization. I wouldn't call it bias, and that's why I think like them using that word is incorrect. And I think that that's kind of the problem with it's adding gas to the to an already a flame that's already there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always tell people, like, you don't need to add any more to it. It's there. We understand it. And I think some people benefit from that, if that makes sense. Like, they want that kind of verbiage to be used and stuff.
Who
Um,
is they? You've been saying they a lot.
oh, dude,
I
I'm the elite.
think it's too broad. I think it's too broad and too general
So I think
and
we
too
all
vague.
agree that in this world there are high ups, people that own billion-dollar corporations and all that shit, and they're really the people that make the decisions in the world.
Oh, I
And
tell you what, I would be. I know what I'd be doing if I had a media outlet.
so, with that being said, what is the hardest group to control? It's a united front. You don't want to, you know what I mean? As long as everyone's divided and against each other, they're easy to manipulate, they're easy to sell things to, and they're easy to keep into control. So
Yeah.
I do believe that these people own your media, they own your fucking your clothing brands, they own everything. So yes, even in little subtle things that they add, trust me, they're doing it on purpose. And it's even in a thing that you don't think is uh meant to, it is. And here's the thing, it's not a crazy, like, we've had psychological studies done in the last 110 years that prove this very thing.
Wait,
Dude, the
what thing?
Stanford or the Stanford
Oh
prison
yeah.
experiment is a number one shower of this. Subtle influences and environment can change someone's fucking behavior drastically and in a
Hmm.
short period of time. And so they use that as a way to keep us fucking divided. I
You
mean,
know
look
what?
what's going on right now. If you people are unable to have conversations because the minute one thing about that conversation isn't what they agree with, they've been taught to call the other person stupid, draw a line, and have nothing to do with them.
Yeah, you know what?
And
I think we're moving past that. Like, and actually, not that I think that. No, I should rectify myself. I would like to actively put it out there that we are making that change. Like
I
in
don't
this.
think so.
No, no.
I think we're
I'm
going the
saying,
opposite direction.
see, that's why also I think this goes back to, I've heard that, and it keeps getting repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, and like, uh, I mean, I've told my friends many times, it's like, hey, like they're like, oh yeah, well you're just a Democrat. I'm like, don't tell me the two-party system. I'm not part of that. It's silly. We should have done away with it a long time ago. There's all sorts of things that we could change about that, but a two-party system, I think, is silly. Trying to say red or blue and 300 million people, it's just absurd. But I do think that it's feeding on people's desires and sense of belonging. I do think that if I had a lot of money, I would invest in psychological studies to see how I could influence markets. I would.
Yeah.
And I don't doubt that is, a very real thing. But I think on that note though, and it goes back to the whole snowflake challenge. I think we can do really fucking good. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think we can be that change. And if we just start by saying, hey, we're not going to be that way. That's it. I'm not going to be that way. You're not going to be that way. You're not that way. And you start, I know, like you can influence people, like you just said, like the Stanford, like you can influence if you start to provide that environment where someone is willing to say, this is no, I'm not adhering to this. I'm not gonna participate in this, made up argument. Like it's beyond me. Like, I guess I know it sounds naive because it probably is. And I know it sounds oversimplified because it is. But what else do I got?
Well, it comes like what's great about it is it's exactly what that like the gestalt that I was studying. This is exactly what people don't know where they fit in, so they try to latch on to things,
Oh
and
yeah, for sure.
they're more willing to grab onto the fucking thing that is in majority than to actually go with their gut instinct.
Yeah.
So, like right now, for example, I just brought up that when you said facial recognition bias, right? So we had a conversation. I showed you what I believe. If I was in a room, I guarantee this. If I was in a room with
Yeah.
left-leaning people and a few minorities, and I told you that exact same thing, even though that what I just said is based off of fucking scientific fact, they would freak out. They wouldn't buy it, and somehow they'd put because I'm a white male, and they would call me racist.
Wait,
Guarantee
hold up though. Hold up
goddamn
though.
it.
Hold up though.
Guarantee it.
Hold up. Hold up. That's what we have to stop. Is like unfortunately, and I think that I can give a different example on a more localized. So bring it back home. Bring it back home. Like what can we influence and what do we have control of? I had some events in my life just yesterday and today, and um, I mean, I won't, give the other people's personal information because it's their right, to their own privacy. But other people were making choices, that were involving me, and it pissed other people off, and I got caught in some crossfire. And so I'm literally getting, one person's chewing me out over here, and then the other person starts chewing me out from over here, just because they got one email and then they reacted and they come call me up yelling at me, and I had to be calm. And this goes back to the other day we were just talking about responding, not reacting. It would have been really easy for me just to fire off like "fuck you too" or whatever, all this other stuff, and I mean that wouldn't have been unreasonable. But I wanted to respond instead. And so when the other person called me up, I called them right back instead of texting them back. I called them, and they opened up with kind of some attitude at me. And they didn't ask me. They didn't, see what the situation really was. They just made assumptions and started firing off. And then I was like, hey, well, that's not what happened. And I was as patient as I could with them. And I tried to, take my time with it. And at the end of the day, I ended up having a conversation with one of my brothers too about how he and I are now fathers. And so he and I, we both have kids. And so he and I now, we're the adults in the room. We're the fathers in the room. We're the ones that are raising a new generation of people. And if we don't do it right, well, there's going to be that we're going to fuck it all up. So we have to do it right. And sometimes that means having patience. And sometimes that means being able to say, you know what, we're going 3,000 miles. We're not going 3 miles. I can see the destination. And I think that the relevancy that has to, us talking about, hey, if we brought this conversation up amongst this people, it would have this reaction. Let's anticipate that. And why would that happen? And how do we, and what is the outcome? There's the real thing that you want to ask. Not, oh, these people, I'm not talking about you personally. What I'm talking about is because this is a conversation that I think keeps on happening again and again. I say the same things that you just said. I'm like, if I said this here, I would get, strung up for it. And it's true. But I have to start looking past that. And I'm like, and I'm talking collectively and broadly right now. Like, how do we look past that, and where do we want to get to? And there's been a number of instances in my life, too many actually, that I could tell you that I've had to swallow my pride. I've just had to, eat a dick, so to speak. And I've just been like, okay, well, I want to get here. I have to deal with this person in order to get there. And this is the overall goal. So I don't care about, all the names this person is going to call me, which happens on a daily basis. I mean, and I'm accused of, doing all these, bad things, by somebody who's really angry at you. But in the end, I know the course, I know where I'm going, and I know it'll play out. And this goes, I think this goes back to even You know, I'm gonna shut the fuck up. I'm full of shit. I'm full of shit, Dan. You know that?
Well, we all are. That's part of being
No,
human.
I don't practice what I preach. Like, and this is real. I've had friendships and relationships that have, you know, I've stopped talking to people this last year. Um, I mean, there was some pretty, you know, bad shit that was said, you know, and like outside of politics, there were some things that were said, you know, to my family that were really just awful. And and then afterwards, you know, like I went back to those people and I was like, hey, you're hurting me. You're hurting my family. You are you are upholding some things that adversely affect, you know, my family now, and here's why. And I was told that, you know, I mean, things like I was just being sensitive, or, you know, or that they didn't mean any offense and so none should be taken. I was like, that's not your right to decide. That's for me
Yeah.
to decide if I'm hurt, not you. But I guess I don't know what I'm getting at. I think I'm getting at that I'm full of shit and then I don't live up to my own ideals, but I'm trying, and I'm getting my ass kicked.
Well, I think here's the thing that I could sum it all up with, and I think
Ah,
it's like
go
when we all
for it.
talk about good
Oh,
intentions,
yeah.
and it's like we don't want to do like so. Here's in my intentions, and this is where I kind of understand this. I agree when I don't want people to be treated differently. I don't want people to be, you know what I mean, when it comes to actual behavior. Everyone should have the same opportunities. Everyone should have, you know, the same go with things. Like it's from a societal element, I am 100% on board with that, right?
Yeah.
What I think is happening now and what I'm kind of is that we are becoming more emotional than logical. And I think it's being done, it started off being done for the right reasons, but I think
Yeah.
it's just gone a little overboard. And
Yeah.
I think it's starting to become counterproductive to where it's like, yes, I completely understand the basis of not wanting one group to be treated differently, seen differently, or anything like that. 100%. And I'm for it. Um,
Yeah.
but then we're coming over here and it's like, okay, but still, this is this. In a physical world, when we're talking about this, like variables, these are still, no matter what you say, no matter what you change, it's just still what it is. It's, you know what I mean? Like pick up the dirt, it's still dirt, you know, and um I think we need to go and I think also this last 2
That's a
years were
tough
very
spot.
hard.
That This last year though, I mean, like that's the hard part though.
Yeah,
Is that
and we got taken out of, you gotta remember, we were locked down. We were taken
yeah.
out of civilization. So of course there's gonna be we're gonna have to make up some time and get out there and that goes to my point, man. The less time you have out in the physical world and the physical
Yeah.
people, the more it fucks your head up. So when people say how great technology is, I'm also telling you how bad technology is fucking people up. Because
Oh, it's
although a
horrible.
lot of us, we we were all locked in, but a lot of us were people that would normally be outside. But there's a lot of people even before COVID that were literally doing the same fucking thing they did during COVID,
Yeah.
spending majority of their time inside, only going out to work, only using technology as a means of entertainment,
Yeah, I was
kind
building
of
the
how
Western
we're.
town in sub-zero temperatures during COVID. I fuck
What's
that.
that?
We were building that Western town out in Montana in sub-zero
Yeah.
temperatures. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
but
I remember.
you got to remember, dude, and it was
Yeah,
for work, but I mean, for the most part, like, dude, big cities, we were shut down. We were kept inside.
yeah.
So it's like,
That's crazy to me.
and so that's what I'm saying. It's like, so everyone now is kind of at a, what I like to call like we're kind of at a psychological deficit because we're kind of getting used to being back out and around. And there's going to be some things we're going to kick back into motion. But my point was, even before COVID, where that happened to all of us, there was a huge group of our youth that were doing that on purpose. And the
Yep.
same effects that we're watching it have on normally logical minded people is what it's having on large groups of fucking youth. And not just for 1 or 2 years, for the first 15 years of their life. And that's why
Yeah.
they socially don't know what to do. They're more prone to depression. They're more prone to intermittent, explosive anger. They're more, there's a lot of issues. And that's kind of what I was going back on the fact of like, you got to know yourself before you can get better. Well, if you don't ever do anything to know yourself, if everything you're doing is in a metaverse or a fucking social media, or and you're not really living you in the physical world, how the fuck could you ever know who you are to ever
Huh.
fix what's wrong with you? You know why you're depressed? Because you have no real connection to the earth. You know why you're confused? Because you haven't done anything. I think it was David Goggins said it toughness and knowledge is built out of being out of sorts. Nobody
Yeah.
gets tougher because they're comfortable. No one ever does that. You have to be uncomfortable, out of sorts, and everything to have the most growth.
You
And
know, I think
our
that's
kids are
true.
not doing that. And that's what we need to push for them to do. And even adults, we got to get them out of what's comfortable, get them back the fuck out into the world so that they can touch something that's real and have their connection to earth and, learn more about themselves and therefore be able to help themselves and help others is kind of my overall fucking message of all my weird shit I just said. That was the
No,
backbone
no,
to
no.
it.
It's cohesive, and I think that like that's like it's when I was emailing you earlier. I think that that's. I mean, me personally, I think that what we're doing is somewhat refreshing because there's a balance to it. You're right. Like some of these conversations, and like some of the things we would say, we get strung up for, and it would just end the conversation. And like there's certain scenarios where I've ended conversations with other people. Because like I was ready to be in a fight sometimes. With things that people would say, little old ladies, would say shit that, like and you're like, boy, like everybody thinks it's gonna be some like big white redneck with a fucking shaved head and a fucking truck. And then one day you're at the fucking supermarket and it's a little old lady and you're like, no shit.
Yes,
Okay.
see, dude, I agree with you. So, like older women, like people's grandmothers, have said things to me that they think is normal. That I'm shocked because
Well,
you're
you know
right.
what?
You're not
You know
ready to
what it
hear it from
was
them.
is it was normal in a different time.
Yeah,
And they're like, I'm too old to fucking learn a new way to fucking do things. And like we knew some guys that were like that. There was one guy, Gordy. Gordy was great. He was like he just stepped off a set of The Sopranos, and he would just he was hilarious, and he would cuss and say he was like hanging out with Archie Bunker,
yeah,
extremely offensive on all levels, and we would constantly be like, hey, Gordy, you can't say shit like that anymore. He's like, I don't fucking care anymore. He thick Boston accent. He would joke about how he would go into stores and he would like, shoplift. And then if they caught him, like he would be like, oh, where am I? Can you call my son?
Oh no shit.
He would pretend to be senile. He was
Fucking brilliant.
oh, he was fucking he was great. He was grand. But anyway, I think, one of the, like what you're really talking about right here, and I think it's something that I would like to try and, convey to people. Something that we were talking about in our messages that a couple of the people that wrote into me the other day and said, hey, we listened to this podcast and they really dug it. The two people that really stuck out to me because I actually know them. One was more conservative Christian, and we've had many conversations, and like things like reptile people and the fake moon landings, and Jordan Peterson is the second coming of Jesus. Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah,
I don't even think Jordan Peterson would want to hear that.
no, but like I'm exaggerating, but
No,
like
I get it. Like, no, I
and
listen
then
to Jordan Peterson because he's like a psychologist, and so like you
yeah,
just I like listening to because he has that like that logic based like, but there isn't. He doesn't always have that emotional wall. You know what I mean? You don't always break that, so I could see why people. It's like you said, perception, or it's two different perspectives. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well,
He's
and like
100%. So it's like some people see that as him being like.
yeah.
Sometimes it's not always the messenger; it's the people taking the message. They might take it different. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. Because we've said that a couple times, like how he can ruffle some feathers, man.
Well, like going, like on that note, we're gonna have to circle back to him in just a second. But
Mhm.
what you're talking about, and to summarize, is you're talking about balance, right? And like being able to, you're gonna have to get uncomfortable, and you're gonna have to have some uncomfortable conversations. And I've had to have a few of those in the last just few weeks, where it doesn't always have to be about politics. That's a distracting thing. What's going
Yeah,
on in your real life? What's your relationship with like with your in-laws? What's your relationship with your kids? What's your relationship with your friends? And there's subjects and things and hard conversations that I have yet to have with certain people because I don't want to have them. And in order to be able to have a healthier relationship with those people, I should have them. And actually, I think this leads into, there's a book that, there's an audio book that I mentioned that I'm listening to, Atlas of the Heart. And I think I'm going to go ahead and pick up a copy and read through it, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I want to actually read and digest. I think it's relevant to the podcast. And I was talking to Dan that maybe we could break down, that book among others in bits and pieces, but helping us to understand our emotions and also learning how to set appropriate boundaries, and to give expectations to other people, and like saying like, hey, this is not okay. This is okay. All right, this right here, this is not okay. This is my boundary, and that has to be respected. And if you don't have those, and like, especially right now, it's so easy, because you're inviting people into your life. Like, I remember, it's why, like, right now my Instagram is private, and it's because there was lots of people that were sending me messages, and that I didn't know, that were just trolling, and it was inappropriate. And I really wanted to go ahead and be able to regulate that. I was like, I'm not going to invite that into my home.
Yeah.
And so, you have to remember, when you're starting this social media or whatever it is, you are inviting people into your life. You are inviting this broad spectrum. It's like inviting a telemarketer into your house, or letting the vampires in,
Yeah.
like, you need to be a little bit more guarded with, who you're interacting with. You don't want to interact with them, okay, don't. It's that simple. I
Absolutely.
like, you'll be fine. Like, you'll go about your life. You both will go vote, however you want. If that's really the biggest deal in your life right now, which I doubt it is, I bet you've got bigger problems than that. I bet you, I bet you've got family. I bet you've got a mortgage. I bet you got kids. I bet you got your own personal struggles. There's other
Yeah.
things that you can focus on, you know. So balance. Is that fair to say? Am I misrepresenting you by
No, I think you
saying
said no.
there needs to
Prioritize.
be?
Like I completely agree. I think
We've
prioritizing
gone from
balance is
John Wayne.
perfect.
We've gone from John Wayne to, well, the snowflake, and then we're like, okay, we need to be back in between. By the way, I just want to follow up on the snowflake challenge. Somebody, because I got the tattoos. Are they on this side of my face or that side? I don't even. But I can't remember which side of my face the tattoos are on. But like, somebody was like, they said, what are those, snowflakes? And I said, yeah, because I'm a delicate little snowflake. And
Yeah.
I've really been trying to make that nickname stick on job sites, but it's never stuck so far.
Well,
But yeah,
just tell him, like, either call me Snowflake or I'll push you off of the fucking a catwalk.
I really, I'm just gonna start introducing myself as Snowflake from now
I'm
on.
Snowflake.
It'll catch on pretty quick. Like, hey, where's
Dude,
Snowflake?
they here, Abram, they have no choice but to call you Snowflake if that's all you tell them your name is.
I'm gonna do that on the next job site. I'm gonna be like, I've changed my name. I'm the artist formerly known as Abram. I'm now
I'm now
Snowflake.
Snowflake.
Now
Get it put
Snowflake.
on your paychecks, on your pay stubs.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Do you want to circle back to the snowflake challenge? Is there more relevancy in finding balance? Is that what we're really talking about?
No, I think it is. I think it is. It just goes to, I mean, here's the thing. I love the fact that we're in a society that is more analytical in how we're behaving, you know? So I absolutely love the fact that we're having conversations of like racial inequality and everything like that. Like, trust me, I'm a huge proponent of it. I think there's definitely need to be changes need to be made. Things need to be talked about. But I think sometimes we get too caught up in our emotions and our narcissism, and we want to be seen talking about something instead of actually talking about and solving it. And what I think
Mm.
that does is that takes away from the actual progress of what's happening. And it's not just in that discussion, it's in any discussion. You know, we have things that we as a society do need to start talking about. And then I think sometimes people go in for their own personal issues that may not have anything to do with the discussion at hand. And they kind of are counterproductive to the discussion. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like there is certain things we need to be on top of, but we also need to recognize that there's certain people that are just like you said, trolls. They're just coming
Oh,
in. They're either overly emotional and they just want validation. So they may not even give a fuck about the topic they're talking about. And they're just, all they're doing is by doing this, they're making the discussion get so ridiculous that we're getting far away from actually being productive. And that's what can be frustrating. So that's why sometimes whenever I call out, it's like, dude, 100%, there needs to be some reform. We need to get some more racial and racial equality. We need to talk about certain things. You know, there's definitely like you had told me before about, you know, just friends and family saying things that were just not even noticing it, but it was like fucked up about, you know, you being in an interracial marriage and your child being, and it's like you can't. And I can understand where you get so fucking mad because you're like, someone says it, you're not ready, and you almost want to punch them. Um,
Yeah,
but there's
actually,
also
you know what?
there's nothing wrong with going back and going, hey man, listen to me.
On that
You
note,
may not have noticed this, but what you said was very offensive because what you're doing is you're insulting the intelligence of someone I love.
see, I haven't had that conversation with some people, and to be honest, I don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
And it's actually, you know, I mean, like, I feel like a little bit of a coward for it. You know,
It's got to be frustrating, dude. I get it. Like, I
like, I mean,
honestly,
like, I don't know how to broach some of those things, especially because, you know, if I bring it up and I say, hey, you know, this was offensive, and I've done it multiple times with, you know, with relationships that really mattered to me. I
yeah,
really tried, and I said, hey, you know, like this is putting a strain, and it's going to cause division, and I don't want to see that. I'm trying to build that bridge back. And, you know, if like pretty frequently the response was that it was my fault, or that I was looking for something, or that I was making it up. I mean, like there was times like I was told it was, we were just completely fabricating it. So, you know, I mean, in those scenarios, it really kind of turned me off, you know, from
yeah.
wanting to try and have those conversations. I'm still willing to do it, and I still have a few more of those conversations to have, but I don't know how to do them. I'd love for people out there who maybe are going through this, or maybe have some training in this. There's got to be somebody that has some kind of training, or some kind of capacity, or some kind of idea. And I don't care if I end up, they might tell us something, and I might say that's fucking stupid, and they might tell me something, and I'm like, oh, that's not a bad idea. I'll take an idea from anywhere, wherever I can find it.
Well, yeah, and also you got to remember a lot of people that are quote unquote experts. When it comes to a conversation like that, you can be a fucking expert at how to say it, but if the person who's hearing it doesn't want to hear it, you know what I mean? You're not. Nobody's that expert
Yeah.
of a talker to where they can say something that a person with a closed mind doesn't want to hear. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
think if you attempted and it was not received, you did all you could do. And if that person cares enough about it or about you, they're gonna try and do what they got to do to try and mend that fence. You know what I mean? Like I always say, dude, sometimes my sense of humor, I get going, man. I get going sometimes and I'll say some ruthless shit. But I always tell every single one of my friends, hey man, this isn't funny and it isn't fun if you're not having fun. I say that all the time. If you're not having fun with anything that I'm saying or something that I'm saying, then it's not fun for me. So, like, let me know. And I always put that out there for people, like, because sometimes I do cross the line. I cross it on purpose because it's a ridiculous line. Meaning not that it's ridiculous that you get offended, but it's ridiculous that people would still even say something like that. You get what I'm saying? So
I
I
do.
purposely do it, making fun of the fact that that was even an acceptable way of thinking at one point. But I know that some people are more sensitive to that, and that's not there's nothing bad against them. It could just be their experiences. So it's like when I
Yeah.
say something, they're like, hey, man, if you look at me, regardless of how I feel, if someone comes up to me and says, Dan, dude, that's just a sensitive subject for me. And I know you didn't mean it, but like, could you just not? I will 100% all the time. I'll say, yeah, man, I'm sorry. And I won't bring it up because as a respect that I have for a person and as a respect as a human being,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if I understand why you get offended or not. If you've asked me not to do something, I won't do it because I
Mm.
respect you, you know? And it's like, hopefully 90% of the time, man, before like in the past where I have had people say that, I knew before they even came to me that I was like, oh shit, I think I went too far. And when they come to me, it's almost like they don't even have to complete it. I'm like, listen, I know what you're going to say, and I apologize, and it won't happen again. You
Yeah.
know,
And you know what?
that's, but that's
I
just
think,
me as a listener. It's like,
you
dude,
know, and
sometimes
I think
people
if
aren't
I, there
like
was
that.
with some people, that would be the reaction I would get. On that note of going too far, you want to hear a funny story from today?
Sure.
So I'm wandering around. We've got this big shop, right? And it's got lights and video and all these different departments and rigging. And I'm working in the office, and then I'm like, and it's great. I feel like I just live on a campus each day, and I just get to work with whatever I want. I just wander around, start asking people questions, even though that's not necessarily my job. I just wander. I'm like, hey, what's this do? What's this? Why does this work this way? I want to understand the whole fucking thing. even though it's not necessarily my department. Like I'm just trying to get a working knowledge of it. I really enjoy it. But anyway, I meet one guy and we're starting to chat. And he's a freelancer. So he comes in and he used to work for the company before and he had left during COVID and he was back now. And anyway, I was talking, well, did you like the company when you worked for it? And we start talking and we talking about the cultural environment. And he starts talking about how, he can kind of cuss and, be himself, in these jobs. And then I started joking about how like it got awkward really fast. And then I tried, backtracking because I said something like, well, yeah, something about like I've probably, jokingly sexually accosted all of the men on my crew.
Yeah.
And then like I realized, and then I was trying to explain like that's what the kind of job environment I want to be in. And then I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right. Like, I'm not just going around sexually harassing all of the men on my job site, and then like I was just like, what I mean to say is grab ass. No, that's not what I mean. Like,
Yeah. What
like,
I mean to me is I want to jerk him off. I mean, no, that's not. Isn't that what I meant?
It was just terrible. And then and then I realized that I had never met this person before. And I was worried. I was just admitting all sorts of like work crimes to this individual. And I was just like, you don't understand. I mean, in a joking way where if the other person is also consenting and joking that it's okay.
Yes.
And it's ironic because it's so absurd that it's obviously not real, and he's like, dude, I got it. I understand,
I got it, man. I understand. You turn around, you're like, you're not a rat, are you, dude?
Because I'll fucking kill you.
I will fucking push you off of a catwalk as soon as we get on one.
Holy shit. Oh, God. Yeah. Man. What an interesting world.
I do have to I do have to get going here. I do have to let you know that. I didn't realize as much time went.
Good. We did. This was our short one. This was our short one that we got in.
Yes. I still think it was like an hour and 10 minutes, but this was a short one.
But it was good. Nice work. Send us your thoughts on the Snowflake Challenge. And we're Detroit. We're St. Louis versus everybody. Send it.
Yeah.
We're
St.
going
Louis
right
and Montana versus everyone, dude.
We're challenging everybody. Generation Z, Y, X, whatever the fuck we got. We don't care.
Whatever letter we're on.
Yeah, man. We don't care if you're 7 or 70. We'll kick your ass in the bar.
I will fight a 6-year-old. Tell me I fucking won't.
All right. We're Dan and Abram.
Versus Life.
Y'all come back now. Later, homie.
Later.
All right, I'm stopped recording.
All right.
Yeah?